royalty. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jetliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin yang, come along.
Come on along and welcome aboard Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Tuesday, as always, brought to you by the fine folks at Andy Moore Honda, Bloomington. Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. Welcome aboard. Kevin Brockway will be joining me soon. Also, Mike DeCourcy, Chronic Hoosier on today. Plenty to talk about. The Wicked Witch of the West is dead, been slayed. Gonzaga goes down. Baylor took care of business. Mike. Let's see here. Some comments already. If you want to hit us up on YouTube, everyone is watching and commenting there. You can do so. Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Feel free to jump in there. Alan says good morning. And the IU legacy lives. Got Dane Fife to talk about today. Forrest points out Baylor too much pressure and physical for Gonzaga. Good morning. Good day to all. Mike says Gonzaga finally faced a challenge and wilted. Now they see what playing a weak conference is a giant killer. Want respect, play a difficult conference, and go undefeated. Well, there's some truth to that, because I can promise you this, and I've said it during the season. There is no way in hell that team goes through the Big 12 or the Big 10 undefeated. You saw what Baylor did to them last night. Baylor, and I sent out a tweet early in the game. It was probably just about 8 minutes in, and it's the old Mike Tyson thing where everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the mouth, and Gonzaga got punched in the mouth repeatedly, and they tried to get up off the mat, but every time they did, Gonzaga would just be waiting for them and punch them right in the face again, Kevin.
Baylor, from being at the game last night, Baylor took Gonzaga out of everything they tried to do. I mean, they took them out of their comfort zone. And I thought it was pretty telling. Baylor set the tone early. 2 second chance baskets, the first 2 points. Their athleticism on the boards. Gonzaga wasn't boxing out. Gonzaga wasn't doing the physical things that you have to do to win a national championship game like this. And they've, got by on their skill and their speed and transition. But you can only do that for so long. You got to be able to, muck it up and match the physicality of a team that's going to come at you. And that's what Baylor did. Their athleticism, plus they hit shots, 5 of their first 7 from 3, created some separation, got up by 19, and really, from that point, there was really no looking back.
Yeah, and I was just talking. I think that not playing stiffer competition throughout the year, it shows. I mean, had they faced teams like Big 10 teams or Big 12 teams more frequently, they probably would have been in a mindset of what it takes more to get by. But as you see, they barely get by UCLA, and Baylor just throttled them. And so there's no way that all these other teams, they're not going to lose along the way. So I'm telling you, it's just a product of you've got to play tougher competition in my mind. Not that they're not a good team, but they are not the giant killer that everybody thought that they were.
Well, let's see. They beat Creighton in the Sweet 16. Creighton was no great shakes throughout the season. I'm trying to remember their Elite 8 win. Was that impressive, or who did they knock off in the Elite 8? But to get to the
final, I don't remember who they beat before UCLA. But it doesn't matter. But Baylor was just, man. Let's talk about
Baylor. Listen, Jim. I mean,
how impressive was Baylor? I mean, that's a hell of a team.
Baylor was clearly the best team in the country. I mean, they were 28-2. So to say that, Gonzaga, would they have gone undefeated? Probably not in a bigger conference, but they would have still been pretty good. I mean, they still would have been a dominant team.
Had Baylor not gotten hit with COVID, do they go undefeated?
Yeah, and Scott True brought that up last night, in the post-game presser, and he was kind of hoping that they would both be undefeated at that point in the season. But they got hit with COVID. It took a while to get their legs back. it took a while to get their defense back. That was really the thing, that Scott Drew emphasized throughout the weekend was that, when they came back from that COVID pause, they played 6 games in 14 days and really didn't have enough time to practice. And, getting knocked out of the Big 12 tournament early was probably the best thing for them because they had that extra practice time. They kind of recommitted to finding their defense again, and they found it. The guards. I mean, Jared Butler. I forgot that Davion Mitchell, he went to Auburn. He was recruited by Bruce Pearl down there and then transferred. But such athleticism. Teague, they come at you at waves. I mean, Mayer is a good player. So many perimeter guys. Mark Vidal, who's kind of a, bruising swingman type that you can play at center. They create a lot of matchup problems. And they were terrific. And Scott Drew, I mean, from 18 years ago in 2003, inheriting that program with what happened with Carlton Dotson, Patrick Dennehy, Dave Bliss, the huge cover-up. He was talking about, that first year having walk-on practices and playing walk-ons. And to build it 18 years later, and, Baylor's administration was patient with him. He went through some NCAA stuff in 2012, 2013, but they felt like it wasn't severe enough to let him go. They let him keep building, and here they are, national champions in 2021, first national championship in school history for Baylor. 1950 was the last time they were in the Final Four. So really an amazing story.
There is so much to talk about today, Kevin. I mean, we've got the NCAA, of course, and Baylor knocking off Gonzaga, which we have been talking about. Dane Fife coming home to Indiana. That was a surprise to me, but in hindsight, it shouldn't have been. We've got the IU players that have announced coming back. Christian Landers coming back. Jordan Geronimo is coming back. You've got Hubert Davis at North Carolina, which, the Indiana people want to get all up in a roar about this hire and that and all this stuff. Look at what North Carolina did. Went out and hired a guy who has spent his time in television. Has he ever coached a lick anywhere?
Well, I mean, he's coached in North Carolina the last few years, kind of learning under Roy, but no, I mean,
before that,
they went inside the family. Listen, they went inside the family, and Indiana went inside the family, but Indiana brought in a guy with NBA experience, a significant NBA. That's a difference. I mean, Hubert Davis is far more green than what Mike Woodson is. I mean, Mike Woodson is, tremendously prepared for this job with what he's been and learning under Larry Brown. So, but the Dane Fife hire, it's very interesting because I know you were talking about Michael Lewis, but this strikes me more now. Dane Fife as more of the coach in waiting type hire that you would expect with regards to his experience and the fact that why would he leave Michigan State? I don't think he leaves Michigan State without that insurance that in
I guarantee it.
Yeah, that 3 or 5 years or 6 years when Mike Woodson is nearing 70 and nearing retirement, that Dane will learn under him and be the guy. I think it's, again, a guy that, knows the Big Ten, knows the recruiting development, the scouting of the Big Ten, and someone that, recruited Aaron Henry out of Indianapolis. And I tweeted this yesterday. It's not about finding Indiana guys. It's about finding the right Indiana guys, making those right evaluations. And I think with a guy like Dane Fife on your staff, you're going to start making, those right evaluations in terms of the guys inside the state.
Yeah, I would have lost money. I would have bet Michael Lewis just because of optics. But here's a funny story now looking back in hindsight, I forget what day it was last week. But it was the week before, I guess, when Michael and Dane were going to play each other. They were going to be on the show together. And Dane told me, hey, get Michael, send this to Mike, get him, make sure he's on with us. It was his idea. Dane doesn't show up though. Michael's here, and then Dane, and he doesn't respond to text messages. I'm like, what the hell? And then after that, I didn't want to bother him about it. I just figured something came up, I didn't want to bother him. But in hindsight now, I'm like, oh, damn it. Now I know why he skipped out. And I wish I would have followed up on that instead of we were all looking forward, looking in front of us when the guy was right behind us. But I do wonder this, Kevin, did getting knocked out of the tournament early help him over, say, someone like Mike Lewis, who had play right up until the other night?
I think that, it might have, but I think the circumstances, like the availability, I think, with him being at Izzo in 10 years, and who knows, maybe behind the scenes, Dane wanted assurances from Izzo that he was going to be the guy to take over for him and didn't get that.
Yeah, that's the I don't know what I don't know thing right there.
Yeah, that's entirely it's speculation, but it's entirely possible, and it's because how do you otherwise explain it? But he's going home. Listen, he's got ties to this program. Even though he grew up in Michigan, he's obviously was a Hoosier player. Last guy on the national championship team in 2002, an all-time career leader in steals. This place obviously means a lot to him for him to come back. And, he had that stint at IPFW, and he did have a sub-500 record, but his last team was very good and left that for Michigan State. So, yeah, we know his, coaching chops here. And I think it's just really, Woodson is surrounding himself with a good staff. He's keeping Kenya Hunter, who's a good recruiter. Now he's got Dane Fife, who, has a lot of experience in the Big Ten, and you got Thad Matta upstairs. I think it's setting up pretty well for him in terms of surrounding himself with the right people.
Yeah, for years and years of doing the wrong thing, Indiana is now doing some right things. I call it insurance. There are kind of maybe going overboard a little bit, but it's not overboard in a bad way. It's giving every opportunity for the program to be successful, to get it back on the ground that it should have been, to where you don't have to do that. Because you shouldn't have had to do that. It's a shame, but hey, it is what it is. Who expected the Archie Miller debacle to be as horrible as it was? I mean, and, I could see, in my opinion, it looked like he's just no fun. I mean, I know he's no fun to be around. I already knew that corpse personality, but the players, the stuff that's coming out that Trayce Jackson-Davis said, that's horrific to me. That it was dark times. It was, from our perspective, I can see that it looks like that. But wow, to really know that it was truly that.
Yep.
Who the hell wants to go to that practice? Nobody. Well, I promise you, when you are that miserable, you're not looking forward to even practicing.
Well, and, we alluded to this. They just look like they played tight all season. And that's like the missed free throws, the missed shots, not playing free and easy. And I think Mike Woodson, that was the thing. Another interesting thing that Trey said in that press conference was talking about the offense being so set-oriented. And the fact that he feels like Mike Woodson is going to get them up and down the floor a little more and allow them to have a little more freedom. And, with freedom comes responsibility too. Now you can't just be, really completely sloppy going up and down the court. But I think there'll be a balance there. And, when you have an athlete like Trayce Jackson-Davis, you got to take advantage of it, right? He's just one of the best pure athletes in the Big Ten. You get him going up and down in transition a little bit, good things tend to happen. And that has to come from your defense too, though. You have to create that points off turnovers. Something that Baylor did really well, circling back to that in the national championship game last night. They forced 14 turnovers on Gonzaga. They got out. They used their athleticism on the break. And that was part of the reason for their success last night.
Yeah, and, so
we got to hit a break soon.
Yeah, we got to hit a break. Good job there. Will's filling in today for John, so perfect. Yeah, I'll get all jacked up, but we'll be back with plenty more. Mike DeCourcy's going to join us, so always enjoy talking to Mike. You're listening to us from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Make sure you follow us on YouTube if you're not already, Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're back with more from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda right after this. Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking for a new or a used vehicle, Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington's got you covered. Yeah, his audio was way wrong on that commercial too. may have to help him with that.
Yeah, he just sent those to me last night, really late.
No,
so
I know. Yeah, I know. His computer should be getting there tomorrow, and monitors right there with it.
Okay, I'll
Friday
be in contact
should be-
with him, and once he gets all the stuff, then I'll run up possibly this weekend.
Yeah, that'll be a world of difference, man. He should be able to do a lot of stuff that way, right?
Yeah.
It'd be awesome. Oh, how was the man? Yeah, Kevin, they jumped on them last night, and it was like perfect.
Yeah. I mean,
What was it like being there?
It was cool, you know. I mean, I was like up in the upper suite, so I was a far way away, but you could kind of feel the energy, and there were a lot of, you know, the Baylor fans were hooping and hollering, and we had a suite next to us, a bunch of, you know, Baylor fans from Texas, and go Bears, you know what I mean, in their freaking accent and stuff. You know, you're trying to write, and they
Dr. J.
one of them is like,
come
one of
see
them
you
is like, right, Baylor are the national champions, you know that, or whatever, you know what I mean? They're like, you know, hooting, hollering, and
That's what they're supposed to do.
yeah, they're fans, you know what I mean? And they, you know, it was, but you know, it was, I think the Gonzaga UCLA game was electric, but just not having the full building too is, you know, it's just a little different because of social distancing. But, you know, there were enough fans there to create a little bit of an atmosphere. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, David, I don't think it was about money. I didn't think he was leaving Michigan. It wasn't about money or Michigan State, but see that, remember what I always say is you don't know what you don't know. What Kevin said a minute ago, I don't know what the deal, because there's the Stevenson guy that has been there longer than Fife, that's also associate head coach at Michigan State. Izzo may have said, hey, man, I can't tell you that you're going to get this, that he's probably going to get my recommendation. Who knows? I don't know what was said there, but that, and I wonder if Mike not having the time to talk to them hurt him, really.
Yeah, I just think Mike I think Mike also really likes Mick Cronin. They might have circled back because, you know, if they want to hire, they could have hired Dane Fife sooner.
We offer an up-close
I
animal
think Mike
encounter with
is in a
elephants
good
and
spot.
giraffes, lodging that is out of this world.
But
with
World-class
UCLA,
and
so
a premier resort experience that is waiting for you on your next visit to
listen, they can still hire him,
West Baden.
right?
Today's
They have
guest
one
is
more
brought to
title.
you by Reynolds Family
Go back.
Dentistry of Sillersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
welcome back to the Golf Club Nickel Point Studios on this Tuesday, brought to you by the fine folks at Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, joined now by the great Michael DeCourcy. Mike, how are you, sir?
I am well, guys. How are you?
Well, we've been sitting here trying to find something to talk about. It is a boring, boring Tuesday. There is nothing going on.
We need a few more of those at this point, don't we?
Man, yesterday I thought that I was going to finally, about 3:30, I'm like, all right, today I'm gonna go out, and I was invited to play some golf yesterday, and I'm not like huge, but I'm like, I need a break, and so I was going to go, and then all of a sudden it starts going, and the Dane Fife stuff hits, and then here comes Christian Lander and Jordan Geronimo, and I'm like, gee whiz, and we got the NCAA tonight. I'm like, crap, there goes the day again. But, man, it all broke loose yesterday. That was a lot to happen in a day for Indiana yesterday.
I didn't even need 4 hours, Jim. I was just trying to get on the treadmill for a 50-minute walk, and,
Yeah.
and the same thing happened to me. So I know exactly where you're coming from. It was an excellent day for Indiana basketball yesterday. First of all, I really like Geronimo's ability. I think he's got a chance. I thought that of the things that I disagreed with regarding Arch from afar, so to speak. I thought Geronimo was worth more minutes than he got this year. I thought that when he played, he gave them energy and enthusiasm and dynamism that other players didn't, and that he really could have helped them. Lander wasn't ready for college basketball, and not his fault, because he wasn't supposed to be in college basketball last year. He was supposed to be a high school senior. So I still think there's a lot of ability there. I'm sure that Kevin knows that there's real talent there, and so to get him back and have the opportunity to hand him the ball will be valuable. And I've known Dane really well since he was at IU. We were able to build a relationship when he was still playing for the Hoosiers. He's one of my favorite people in college basketball. Got a nice little sort of sarcastic wit about him. A great demeanor. Really,
You mean like
bright.
Bob Knight?
No, because
Without the bite.
well, maybe. I mean, maybe that's a fit. But Bob Knight without the bite is certainly not Bob Knight.
No.
But he's a wonderful person, and he loves IU, and he very much wants to be a part of that program, and I think this will be a great experience for him. And Mike is 63, I think, Mike Woodson, and so I don't know how long he wants to coach. But perhaps if he coaches 5-7 years, something like that, maybe it'll be an opportunity for Dane to slide over a few inches and sit in the other chair. I think that he'd be a wonderful person to look forward to the future there. Just a great person, and I'm very excited for him to get this opportunity.
Mike, you mentioned so much of recruiting last week. You alluded to is the evaluation piece. What do you say about Dane's reputation as an evaluator in that regard, and finding guys, and not necessarily, like you said, it doesn't have to be 5-star guys, just guys that are going to be a fit?
Well, look at some of the players that are on Michigan State's roster that aren't necessarily the absolute cream guys, that weren't necessarily the 5-star guys like Malik Hall. That would be a good example, who was a very valuable piece to their roster. And in the past, Aaron Henry, Aaron Henry is obviously a 5-star guy, somebody that was not as difficult in evaluation. But AJ Hogard, another terrific player for them, or a terrific prospect for them. Julius Marble, a guy who is as tough as they come. Those are all players that were on their roster. Look, Michigan State did not fail this year because they didn't have enough good players. If anything, they failed because they had too many good players and struggled to find the right mix. Sometimes it's easier for you when you've got 7 guys or 8 guys, and it's just a question of how do you arrange these 7 or 8 guys. It's the only ones you got to figure it out. But when you've got 11, it's like, well, what if we try this? What if we try that? This isn't working. That isn't working. And they never really were able to come upon the absolute right mix for this group. But they certainly had a lot of pieces to choose from. And that's a big part of the job when you're a recruiter. Now, the one thing that they didn't do this last year was find a point guard, but it's not like they've never had a point guard in their program before. I mean, this is the program that had Cassius Winston. So I think that he'll do a really nice job in that area of identifying players who will make IU better and who will want to make IU better. I think that he'll be able, as much as anyone, understand who's really committed to being a Hoosier. And you can see in the players who are returning, Trace, Jordan, Christian, those guys, they had other options. I mean, don't kid yourselves. They aren't back because nobody called when they put their names in the transfer portal. They had other options, and those options were identified to them, and they still said, "No, I'm in. I'm a Hoosier. This is what I want to be." And you cannot underestimate how important that is.
Absolutely. Just like Dane Fife coming back. I mean, to leave a place and a guy he's been with for a decade, that's got to be difficult, even though he played here. His family's from Michigan. He's from Michigan. So that's a huge commitment. But that's what that program needs, a commitment, a deep commitment from someone, basically what you just said. With that said now, they move forward. They've gotten everyone back except right now Armand Franklin, which is the last. I guess Race Thompson is there too.
Yes.
But that's Armand Franklin being the last of the Indiana kids, quote unquote, to see what he's going to do. But then there's the transfer portal that works both ways for Indiana.
Yes.
So there's a lot of options there.
Yeah, and the young man Stewart is going to give them some of what they lacked this year. At least that's the plan. Parker Stewart. The idea is that he will give them the ability to have a bigger wing who can stretch the defense. I mean, remember my criticism, my concern about this IU team was that they played three small guards, which weakened them defensively without the corresponding plus of guys who make shots. And Baylor's a perfect example. Baylor played, they were pretty tough guys, but they were three small guards. I mean, Maceo Teague was the biggest at 6'4". Butler's only 6'2", and Davion Mitchell's 5'11". Well, what made them great? One, they were really physically tough, but two, all three of those guys were elite shot makers. Not good, elite. If you're going to play that kind of lineup, those guys got to make shots. And that's not who IU was this year. And that's why it didn't work. So now, maybe Stewart is able to add some of that. And, maybe Christian Lander develops some as a perimeter shooter and as an overall player so that you can play him more. But you have to have that in this game, in today's game. If you don't make 3-point shots to some degree, it's really hard to be successful. And as you saw with this IU team, it was really hard to be successful.
And I think Armand Franklin was kind of on the come, before some of the, ankle injuries derailed him a little bit. And he was a little sloppy with the ball. I give you that in terms of, but I don't think he should have been taking the ball up transition half the time. I mean, that was partly on Archie. But, I think he's a key. I think if you can convince him to come back with his chemistry with Trace, with them both being 2-year guys, and to go with Parker Stewart and Armand shot, I believe, over 40% from three, then I think you really have something.
Yeah, I think that he can be helpful without a doubt. If he's not interested in being part of it, though, I don't think he's a major loss. I think that he is a helpful player, but he's not a true point guard, and he's not an elite shot maker. I think that he's a productive college player, but there may be, if he chooses not to remain a Hoosier, there may be better players out there, guys who can do more to stretch the D.
Parker Stewart,
maybe a more established point guard.
The kid from Pitt, Xavier Johnson. What do you know about him?
Well, we've got Parker Stewart on the team as well that we have not seen yet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what I was talking about before. That he, ideally, that's what he's to provide you. That length on the perimeter that allows you, that makes it more difficult for opponents to operate. That length, it gives you. Even if Parker is not an elite defender, and I don't know, but if you're an average defender and you're longer, you're more useful. If you're a great defender and you're longer, you're way more useful. But you don't have to be long to be a great defender. Jared Butler showed us that last night. You don't have to be, but it helps. And that's something that the Hoosiers didn't have this year for the most part. In most of their perimeter rotations, they didn't have that. And ideally, Parker Stewart would provide it. But I think that for next year to be successful, IU, like Kevin said, needs another guard, and it would be preferable if he were either an elite playmaker or a significant shot maker. If you could get one of those two, you can work around the rest. Armand doesn't fit either category. He is a very capable college player who sort of squeezes in between those two categories. I don't know what his thoughts are about whether or not he wants to return. But if he does, he'll be a useful player. If he doesn't, I think there are other players out there that can help the Hoosiers in one of those two categories I identified.
Yeah, last night watching Baylor, that stood out. Getting to they were just blowing by guys. And I was like, wow, that is the difference right there. Indiana does not have that guy that can just go by an elite defender and get to the rim and create his own play like that. And I'm like, wow, you can just see it when it's not there. Romeo Langford-esque. I mean, his ability to get to the rim was incomparable, but you got to have the rest of your game to go with that. But anyway, they have not had that elite talent.
Yes.
And if you don't, you better coach at an elite level, or you're not going to have elite status. It's just pretty simple.
Well, one of the things that Mike talked about in his press conference was they need more shooters, and it's absolutely true. I mean, look, Baylor won the game last night because they made shots. That's the number one thing that they did, because Gonzaga couldn't cope with Baylor's offensive rebounding. That was a huge difference, and all those extra possessions, a good number of them were turned into 3-point shots from either Teague or Butler in this case, or Flagler. It was not a great shooting night for Davion Mitchell, but those guys all made shots. I mean, this was the number, depending on the day, they were the number 1 or number 2 3-point shooting team in college basketball. And what do you know? They're the champions. That is not disconnected. That is very much cause and effect. They were an elite offensive basketball team. They were at one point an elite defensive basketball team. They never really became that again. They started to leak a little bit before their COVID pause. The pause absolutely destroyed their defense. It went from being problematic to devastated. And even by the end, it never made it all the way back. I mean, Gonzaga last night shot over 50% from the field, scored over a point per possession. But the offense was so extraordinary, both in terms of retaining possession. They didn't turn it over, and they got offensive rebounds, and then turning those points, those possessions into multiple points, a lot of threes, some and ones, just not wasting opportunities. What did Gonzaga do? They turned it over, and often against minimal pressure, often also against pressure. They missed free throws. They didn't make threes. There was no way that Gonzaga's formula, with the way they played, was going to add up to victory.
14 turnovers, Mike, and 8 in the first half and 6 in the second half. Mark, if you didn't want to go there about Gonzaga being spent from that UCLA game, what do you think?
No, I didn't think that was the issue. I thought it was structural, and I could see it from the very start. I mean, if you looked over my shoulder at my notes, the first note I made, wrote down on my screen, was Gonzaga killed on offensive glass early, and it was obvious from the start that the structure of the Baylor approach was not built well for Gonzaga. So how does Gonzaga counter that? Well, the first thing that has to happen is Corey Kispert has to make threes. So my second note says, Corey misses first open three. Yikes. I knew that he'd been struggling to make shots. I've talked about it and wrote about it on multiple occasions prior to this game. You didn't know whether it was going to continue, but when he missed that first one, you knew it was going to continue. He had to drop that first shot to say, we're here and we can compete. And when he didn't, and he was wide open, this was not a guarded shot. It was, they ran a nice action. They got him an open three from the wing, and he didn't make it. And there was no way they were staying in that game without him making shots, because he's the only great shooter they have. Suggs is a great player who can make shots. Nembhard is a good player who can make shots occasionally. Ayayi can make shots, but he doesn't like to take them because he knows he's the fourth, fifth option. And so that it had to be Kispert, and it wasn't. So I don't think that – look, he didn't make shots in the Southern Cal game. He was 3 of 10. He didn't make shots in the UCLA game. He was 2 of 8. He didn't make any shots, really, in Lucas Oil Stadium. And I don't, and you can't tell me it was it may have been for him. The dome background didn't suit him, but it sure as heck didn't hurt Baylor.
No, it did, man. They did not have a problem. And usually it takes a minute to get acclimated, but they were acclimated. And they just seemed locked in. I mean, from the word go. I told Kevin earlier, I sent out a tweet that it was the old Mike Tyson tweet. Everybody's got a plan. Do you get punched in the mouth? And man, Gonzaga, they didn't lay on them.
Tyson, yes.
It was perfect because that's exactly what it was. Gonzaga got punched in the mouth and they didn't lay on the mat. But every time they would get off the mat, Baylor would just punch them in the face again. I mean, that was one thing about Baylor. They got within single digits, I think, once, but man, they did not wilt. And that was as impressive as anything. They took Gonzaga's absolute best, and it wasn't nearly close enough.
Yeah, Jim, one of the things that surprised me, and in the end, you wonder whether it made a difference or not, but when Suggs got his second foul 3 minutes into the game, at that point, the offense this court was completely tilted toward Baylor's offense. I mean, Gonzaga couldn't stop them, and they couldn't get it. And when they could stop them, they couldn't get the rebound to complete the defensive stop. I mean, at that point, I don't know exactly what the offensive rebound numbers were 3 minutes in, but it was clear that was a massive problem for Gonzaga. And so Suggs gets a second foul, and my thought right away was, okay, you bring in Anton Watson, you get bigger, and try to plug that leak. You have to address.
We lost him.
We'll see if we did.
I think we may have lost him.
Yep, sounds like it. It's okay.
By the way, some breaking Big Ten news. Barry Alvarez announcing his retirement at the end of the year.
Yeah, I saw that. I heard that was coming the other day. And not a big surprise, I guess. Maybe a little surprise. But why not? Man, that dude's doing it right off into the sunset. He's got years to go, and he's got nothing else to do. I mean, yeah, why work until you're 80? Just hang, because he's just going to hang back now and watch all the Wisconsin sports in the spring and whatnot, and then go down to Florida back and forth. That's what I'd be doing. But there's Mike jumping back in there. Mike, how are you, sir? As he attempts to get back in, just start talking, Mike, when you get on there. We'll let you go. But, I saw Ask You from Kentucky went into the portal yesterday. Mike, if you can hear us, you can go ahead at any time. But also, I had Jake Crane on yesterday from J-Boy Show, and he was talking about the potential of Keon Brooks Jr. entering the portal and transferring, which his dad has said that that's not happening, but we'll see. But, I think we've lost Michael. I see him popped up there, but I can't hear him. So,
I think it's his connection. I'm texting with him now.
But we got to take a break anyway, so let's just go ahead and hit a break. And when we come back, we can get him back. We'll have him. If not, we'll continue. But you're listening to Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you from the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios, brought to you by the great folks at Andy Moore Honda Bloomington. We're back with more right after this.
Welcome to your extraordinary
Need
destiny.
to give away some Pizza X pizzas.
You going to give them away to me or no?
No, I'm not giving them to you. You can have one.
No, that's all right. I think I had their pizza once when I first moved here. It was not.
I have one already. This is for Dwayne Blackford. He has won one already. I'm going to write that down. I don't know.
You do like trivia questions or something or no?
Well, I forget. Just different ways.
Oh, man, I didn't get home till 3 a.m. Then we get that football Zoom call at 11.
Flipping forgot about that. Damn it.
Yeah.
Gee whiz. Yesterday just wrecked my day, man. I'd already worked almost 8 hours, and I was so.
Well, I did
flippin' tired.
I did the Fife story right before I left, but I didn't see Lander and Geronimo. I'll have to follow up on that today.
I just happened to see Geronimo. I was talking to, well,
You were talking to Lander? Well, now they have all 4 of their freshmen back, so that's good.
all right. I wonder why.
I don't know. He's the only guy that has issues on this platform. He asked, do we want him to join back in for the next segment or not?
Well, if you can't hear me, that sucks.
That sucks.
Hey, Mike, can you hear us now?
Oh,
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Mike, you're back.
I wonder why. Man, yeah, we don't. I wonder why it just seems to be a delay or something. I don't know why that is.
And it always seems like it's just with you, though. Like all of our
I
other
don't know what it
guests.
is about this platform. You break up constantly. I don't know what it is, why that is. Is there? I think maybe we need to try to use my computer. Maybe send the links by email and see if my computer works better than my iPhone, because it's always been a problem
on your
since
iPhone.
switched to this StreamYard. It's like this every week.
Yeah, just text me your email.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
I'll start sending
if
you the link on your email.
if Will were to send the links by email, maybe it would work better.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, let's
wasn't
give that a
happening.
try
My fault.
next week.
My apologies. I did not know that was not happening.
Yeah, I should have probably said something sooner.
I thought that they were. Yeah, I thought that you were sending them by email.
No, I never had his email.
I wasn't aware of that. Man, we were so busy that we're in a break, right?
Yeah.
Gosh, so my head just started went crazy. I'm like, am I just sitting here? We were so busy, Mike, that I just realized almost a weekend we just missed our 1-year anniversary.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sillersburg. You need
Taking
$1 million
over rivals.
smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Welcome back to the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios on this Tuesday. Jim Coyle with you as always, joined by Kevin Brockway from CNHI and the great Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Fox, Big Ten Network. Man, you get to at least take some hats off, Mike. Or not.
I'm sorry, I missed that, Jim.
I was going to say, at least it's time now. You get to take some hats off now that the season's starting to wind down with BTN and Fox doing a little less work, hopefully, for you.
Yes. That's for sure. Yes. My friend John Rothstein from CBS Sports will often tweet during March Madness that he has this slogan, "We sleep in May." And one time after reading that, after getting too little sleep, I tweeted him back and I said, "Why won't you let me sleep in April?" I think that I think April's a good month to try to catch up a little bit on the sleep lost during March. It's been, I will say, guys, that and you were there, Kevin, and so how much work was put in by the NCAA, David Warlock in the media side, Dan Gavitt overseeing the entire operation, a lot of people whose names aren't as well known, that the work that everybody from the NCAA and the Indiana Sports Corporation put together was just staggering. We played the 66th out of 67 NCAA tournament games last night. In an environment when less than a week before Selection Sunday, there were lots of people talking about how this was going to be a disaster because of COVID and contact tracing and all the rest of that.
Well, you
Lost
remember the
one
conference.
game.
Yeah.
to COVID
Yeah.
and one team. Just an
And you remember
amazing
all-
performance by everyone involved in the NCAA. They made some mistakes.
But that was, you remember the conference tournaments, Mike. I mean, there were issues, right? The ACC and the Big 12. And I think there was a lot of trepidation, going into it. But I think the way they set it up with the bubble in downtown Indianapolis, and, we heard the stories from the Baylor players last night about playing Connect 4 and cornhole and everything, and how they really, it was kind of a bonding experience there, 4 weeks holed up together in the hotel. I mean, the longer you were there, the more you bonded. And that certainly showed on the court with the teams that advanced far.
Kevin, when they started the tournament, the first day that they got inside the bubble, one of the coaches that was involved texted a photo to Matt Norlander of CBS Sports of the fish he had ordered, complaining about the food on day one, and then on day 22 or whatever, I talked to Mick Cronin from UCLA about the fact that they were on their way to the Final Four. This was subsequent to the victory over Michigan, and he said his players were having an absolute blast being there, because it wasn't the Final Four as we know it, but it was the Final Four, and it was certainly a better Final Four than we had in 2020, if you'll recall. And the players who stayed, the longer they stayed in the bubble, the more they appreciated everything that was involved in helping them to stay into the bubble until either they lost, as UCLA and Houston and many others did, or Gonzaga last night, or went home with a trophy like Baylor did. That was the goal, to send 67 teams home. To send 67 teams home with a loss and one with a trophy, and they managed to send 66 out of those 67 home with a loss. I think that's a pretty remarkable achievement.
Absolutely. I was just sending a text to a friend of mine, LJ Wright, who I went to high school with, and he is the director of men's championships for the NCAA. He was on with us before this. So I'm like, man, I cannot wait to get you back on while you were talking about that, to talk about all this, because it was this was a FEMA type deal, man. This was a large undertaking of people, of food, of transportation, of logistics, just so many things that went into it. And the product was spectacular, as I thought it might be. The games were great. It was just spectacular. I wish, as a stingy person, we could do that every year. I wish oh my gosh, Mike, can you imagine if we were able to have the NCAA tournament in Indiana each year?
It would be fun to do it one time for real, so to speak. The tournament, part of the magic of the tournament is that it is happening at once in this wide variety of locations. It could be Provo, Utah. It could be San Diego. It could be Dallas. It could be Chicago or Pittsburgh or Indianapolis. It could be any of those places, and it's often, it's all of them at once. And of course, I left out the fact that there's a site in North Carolina every single year, which a lot of people are bothered by, and rightfully so. But that's part of the magic of the tournament. But it would be cool, wouldn't it, if you just brought that thing back here another time when everybody in this city could be involved in it, and everybody in this city could show the players firsthand how much they're appreciated, instead of at a distance with a wave, that sort of thing. I think that even without those personal touches, the city of Indianapolis, I mean, they talk about deserving a gold medal. The city, the people who did it, it was. I said back when they launched this initiative that if you said to the NCAA, okay, all 8 cities that you have planned for this first round and all the Sweet 16 sites you've got and all that, you can't go to any of them. You have to find all new cities, and you've got 3 months to do it. And under normal circumstances, they could do that in a snap. They're that good. But this time they had to completely reinvent the tournament in 3 months, and they pulled it off. Just staggering achievement by the city, by the sports corp, by the NCAA staff. They, like I said, we can't pretend that they didn't make mistakes. The referee thing at the start, not good. The imbalance between the men's and the women's, really not good. But they still had that primary goal, and that was also true for the women, who I believe did not have any interruptions at all, and they sent 63 teams home with a loss. So I think that they deserve a ton of credit on both fronts.
Yeah, and this summer we're going to talk about, because I know you're a huge soccer guy. We're going to talk about the payment thing with the men and the women. That we'll have plenty of time for that. We'll have plenty of need for content later, but that's definitely something I want to talk about because that kind of plays off of the NCAA thing here. But I just wonder how that kind of thing happened as badly as it did. That was in this day and age. It kind of just, I'm like, how do you make that mistake today?
Failure of planning and a failure of communication. Think about it. I mean, now I know that not everybody is technically working in an office now, and they may not have physically been in the NCAA headquarters when they were planning these two tournaments. I don't know the answer to that. But figuratively, the women's side, the people who are running the women's tournament and setting that bubble up in San Antonio, could have figuratively walked across the hall or literally walked across the hall and said, hey, what are you guys doing for the men? And then they were told. And then they could have said, okay, we'll do that too. And it would have been that simple, really. And it would have been more costly and that sort of thing. But they should have had identical plans in so much as they could. Now, obviously, different places, different facilities, there are going to be some variances. But basics like testing, like the weight room, those sorts of things, those things should have been equivalent, and in obvious cases they were not equivalent, and that can't happen. That was too easily covered, and they allowed that to slip through the cracks.
I agree, man. How about Aaron Rodgers becoming the next host on Jeopardy? Apparently, he did a heck of a job last night, man. I have not seen it, but I've seen several people comment on it.
Yeah, it's a cool idea, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. But obviously, I was not able to prep for last night by watching him. That's a 7:30 show in the Indianapolis market, and so I was on my way down to Lucas Oil last night. But I'll be sure to catch him when he comes back around tonight.
Can you imagine Peyton Manning was on there? That dude is just he cracks me up. He's just good at whatever he does. But
yes.
He would kill it.
He would be funny. He would be funny in that role, no question.
He would be out. Mike, what do you have coming up? I missed your last piece. I read it, and now I can't. I had it pulled up, and I lost it.
His story on Mark Few over the
I
weekend
did a couple of
phenomenal.
things last week that are still relevant.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it's all relevant. Oh, yeah, the Mark Few piece.
The next thing I have coming up is that guys, is that preseason top 25, the way too early top 25 that I promised. And so you can have fun poking holes in that one. It'll be up later today, and we'll see how it goes.
Looking forward to that, and make sure you guys look forward to that too. Mike, have a great week. Go out and have fun, and maybe get to have some relaxing time this week.
I'm going to do the best I can, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, man. Mike DeCourcy, the great Mike DeCourcy, joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat from Fox, BTN, and the Sporting News. I don't know why he has – he's doing it on his iPhone. But Chronic Hoosier is going to join us next when we come back. He's with us now. Chronic, how are you, brother?
I'm doing awesome, man. How's it going, Jim?
It's going. We're about a minute and a half away from having to hit a break, but just finished up with Mike DeCourcy. There's so much to get to today, of course. Dane Fife coming back, but we haven't talked about Lander and Geronimo much. Kevin Brockway's with us, of course. We haven't talked about Lander and Geronimo coming back much at all. Talked talked about NCAA Baylor, of course. Hubert Davis at North Carolina. That's a little strange. Of all the people that North Carolina has, they take a guy that's coached very, very little. So you look, Indiana can look at how they did their coaching search and look at what North Carolina did. It's crazy, but different rounds for different people, I guess.
You know, it's the Carolina way, man. They always have really put a premium on keeping things inside the family. You know, it's what programs preach. That's what the culture is supposed to be about. And while it's certainly is it a reach? Absolutely, for a program of that caliber, but it's true to form for them. So kudos to them for being true to who they are.
Well, and not only that, and I know we've got to hit that break here in a second, but Texas Tech hired Chris Beard assistant. Who else just hired a coach? Someone else just did the same thing. So that is the preferable way if you can make it happen. Doesn't always work. But let's go ahead and hit that break. We'll be back with more Chronic Hoosiers coming on. Indiana Sports Beat brought to you by the great folks at Andy Moore Honda Bloomington. We're back with more right after this.
I'm gonna
What
run
up,
downstairs
man?
and get some coffee.
I just topped off myself.
I go double up, man. So I don't have to leave.
I tell you what, that was a great game last night. But man, I hate being that old guy, but that was a late one. That was a really late one. And then you got to watch everything. You know, you can't go to bed before you see one shining moment. And then, you know, next thing
I did not see one shining moment, I'll be honest with you.
see.
I packed it in.
That's what happens when we get old, man.
I know.
The flip
I was
side is you pay
thinking
the
that.
price.
I was thinking that because I was at home and I'm like, all right, I want to go out and watch the game. I want to be among people to watch the game. And I had to talk myself into doing that. And I didn't go into town. I just went over to the Facts, but I'm at the lake. That's kind of a drive into town that late.
No, absolutely. But it, you know, those late tips just they make you
They're brutal.
recalibrate. Yes.
Dude, I used to not give a crap about a 9 o'clock tip. Maybe up to 2 years ago, I didn't give a crap about a 9 o'clock tip. All of a sudden, I'm like, bullshit on these 9 o'clock games. Cancel them all.
You know, there's a lot of eyeballs out in the West Coast, and you know,
I
people talk about East Coast media bias, and you know, they got to do what they got to do to maximize it. I mean, obviously, if you're a college basketball fan, you're going to watch no matter what time of the day or night they put it on. I mean, hell, look at Premier League soccer and the number of people it drags out of bed at 7 a.m. on a Sunday. But you know, that's rough. It's rough in this new world of equality of viewing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Man, let's see. Dane Fife. That was a surprise, man. I would have lost money on that because I just didn't think he was leaving there. But I thought Michael Lewis was timing. It was perfect. I thought it was going to be him. But I don't know. I guess that I don't know what was said in Michigan State. I mean, I don't know the other guy, the other associate head coach, maybe the actual guy in waiting. I don't know why they wouldn't say that.
You know, I'm not real sure. It was made aware to me that you know that was not a foregone conclusion that was Dane's job to lose. Should he chose to stay there. But, you know, the flip side is what the hell we've been doing all these years. If Dane has been pining to come back home, if this
That's
has
what
been
I'm saying.
his dream destination, you know, that he's willing to leave this late in the game up there. I mean, a decade that's a big chunk of change. when
Well,
you're a
that's because
coach.
4 years ago, Fred Glass spoke to no one, gave no one an opportunity to do that other than Archie Miller. That's Fred Glass. And,
No, I know
and
He
whoever-
wanted his own guy, yeah. Obviously, you know, his own guys.
no, but he's talking about in the Archie position. Well, no, I mean, yeah.
No,
Archie
I mean
should've
as an
brought him in.
assistant. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
my
no.
whole thing.
But say
If he would have
That's the
crawled
whole
down to
Archie thing,
Bloomington,
man. Yeah, that's the whole Archie thing, though. Archie was not about Indiana. He's not about Bloomington. He's not about anything but
Today's
Archie Miller.
Today's guest is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville.
I didn't have
Tossed
toaster.
pizzas, bold burgers,
That doesn't
and
really work
ice
out well.
cold beer. Pizza, burgers, beer. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville.
Welcome back to the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios, brought to you by the fine folks at Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. Joined now by Chronic Hoosier, and he brought up a great point in the break. Why didn't Marchie Miller, the first thing he did is should have brought in an IU guy as an assistant. Dane Fife coming in, you talked about Chronic in the break, and you're exactly right. That probably would have he might still be here. I don't know, but because I don't think he listened to anybody. I don't think that's why Bruiser's not here anymore. But yeah, you're right. That should have happened a long time ago. But that's part of the reason why we're doing this change now is because that stuff wasn't happening. But man, now you're getting a Mike Woodson, you're getting a Dane Fife, who this is turning out to kind of look like the guy in waiting now.
You know, I'm not sure that we'll ever know exactly how that was pitched, what the promises were made, or anything. It could have just been they opened the door, and he was all too willing to step through it. But it's, you talk about some coups, man. 9 days, you've made Thad Matta a Hoosier. You've brought Dane Fife back to Bloomington. And I said it yesterday, the brilliance of this hire. Not only is Dane one of the best assistant coaches in the nation, just an absolute dog on the recruiting trail. Just proven successful assistant. You just made one of your biggest opponents weaker in the process. And I'm not saying this was done to be petty, but that's some art of war stuff right there. When you get stronger while making your opponents weaker, you want to talk about teaching this team, or retraining them on sound man-to-man principles. Good luck finding another guy to help communicate and coach that message. Just absolutely stunned that it happened. And again, one of those things where nobody knew anything until all of a sudden Dane's coming home, and you got a graphics package, and he's thanking the Michigan State community for a decade of his career. Where he took a step, I don't know if it's necessarily a step back. He probably got a pay raise from what he was making at Fort Wayne to go sit on Izzo's bench. But just absolute monster hire. I'm really floored at what the last move is going to be. He's still got a position to fill. I understand Mike Roberts would very much like to keep the job. Also another Indiana guy, but as we were talking about, there's still some big fish left out there to round out this staff. So I'm really curious to see what he ended up doing with that final assistant position. And then who else? We heard the Larry Brown talk last week. We've reached the point now, though, where nothing that comes out of Cook Hall is going to be surprising to me anymore, because clearly Woody ain't messing around, man. He's building something here in short order. And we still got some roster positions to announce. Obviously, big day yesterday with Lander announcing he was coming back. TJD recently said he's coming back. Geronimo's coming back. As I mentioned yesterday, man, Armaan and Race, two huge pieces left to drop. My guess is that's probably 24 to 48 hours away from being known. And I'd probably estimate if we don't hear something here in the next day or two, probably not great odds on either. It's my understanding Coach basically gave everybody a week to kind of figure out what they wanted to do, get on board or get out of the way so we can make room for some other guys. But, those two guys alone, that's 26% of IU scoring last season. That's still up in the air, a couple of returning starters. So my guess is we'll know what this is going to look like and what other maybe late additions are made to the roster, with the transfer portal being ridiculously full right now.
Yeah, Kevin, I'm a little surprised if this goes past tomorrow, to be honest with you. I would think that you've got to get the coaching staff intact, of course, but they've got to fill some roster holes. And it's like, hey, man, if you're not coming back, that's cool. Go do what's best for you, but we've got to do what's best for us. And they've got to move forward because they've got to get a team in place. And I think that there's been enough time. Everyone else has made a decision, so I would be shocked, like Chronic said, this doesn't happen in the next couple of days.
I think, the pull to go back to Minnesota for Race, I'm guessing, is probably strong.
But what's he going back to? That team sucks.
Well, they bring in a new coach, and you could go and be a feature guy there, maybe, or be a guy that you could build around. I mean, that's a possibility. That's always a possibility in that situation. And, Race was recruited by Tom Ostrom. Tom isn't there anymore. So, there could be some loyalties there. But Armaan, I mean, like I said, I think that's a big key. If you can get Armaan back, And I know, you might be able to find something better in the portal, but I'm telling you, continuity in college basketball is still important. And you have him and, Trace together. They were establishing a little chemistry together. You bring him back, and, he did hit some game-winning shots. I mean, Iowa, and before he got hurt. I was not a big believer in Armand as a freshman, but I am a little bit more now, and I think him coming back would be like a leading scorer would be pretty big.
Yeah, Chronic. I mean, everyone would like to see him back. He's an Indiana kid, and that would be great. He's worked hard to become the player he became last year, and it would be nice to see that continue. But we saw what Nate Oates did at Alabama. He put that team together with a lot of transfers. We saw what Eric Musselman did at Arkansas. That's a team built on transfers. So, man, when you've got the core in place that they have with Trace Jackson Davis and the guys that are coming back, all you just need is a couple other pieces. And I think if it's not Armand, they can find that in the transfer portal.
Yeah, this is just the new reality of college basketball. I mean, look at Baylor. They had 3 transfers in their in their 7-man rotation that they relied on most heavily. So you can certainly expect to see it. It comes down to a question of the known quantities of the guys on your roster versus trying to find the right fit for some of the holes in that transfer market. And then figuring out, I think it's going to force a lot of coaches to be more selective in how they're offering, how they're recruiting. It's one of the reasons why the NBA has kept the draft rules the way they are, because it allows any more time you have for evaluation at a higher level of competition just eliminates that many more degrees of risk in your personnel decisions. So, with the transfer market being what it is right now, it's a whole lot easier to make apples to apples comparisons once the kid's already been in college. Once you have comps against the level of competition they faced, who knows how it's going to go. But at the end of the day, Indiana has a lot of needs in their roster. They have some issues with depth that they're going to have to address, and whether it be through retention of existing players or going out into the transfer market and trying to find some guys to plug that hole, they're going to have to get started on it sooner than later, because while there's a boatload of kids in there, finding the right kids, finding the right fits is just absolutely going to be a premium. And as we've said in shows past, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, it's critically important. The degree of difficulty is insanely high in these first couple of classes for Woodson. So having that continuity of roster, of chemistry, but also having a very clear plan on how you plan to build this thing going forward is going to be paramount, because if you have to look at the returns that these kids are going to be able to give your program. And, finding a 1-year fix is all well and good. We saw it in 2016 with the addition of Max Bielfeldt. Absolutely huge move for the program, enabled them to put a conference championship up. But the return was short-lived. There was a huge void as soon as his eligibility was expired. So trying to find guys that are going to give you that continuity from season to season, and also make you as good as possible, as soon as possible. This is some 3-dimensional chess right now.
Yeah, the thing about Baylor, and to a lesser extent Houston too, because people have made that point, is that they did have filled with transfers, but they had transfers that played together for a while. They played together for two years, so it's not necessarily guys jumping right in. I think there still is a little bit of an adjustment there. But if you have supreme talent and you have a nucleus around them, it can be a quick fix, but it doesn't always work out that way.
And it certainly doesn't hurt when you're bringing back a all-conference player and Trace Jackson Davis. I mean, you've got a core right there that has some promise. You've got a lot of youth that you have the opportunity to develop and kind of establish. You've got that continuity baked in the lower classes. But at the end of the day, this is also a team that's dealt with some pretty significant issues in their leadership. Some pretty glaring issues in their leadership. So trying to figure out how to balance all of that moving forward, and then kind of giving this vision shape. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out, but I would hope that we probably see this resolved here in the coming days, if not a week or so, because one thing that gets lost in all this, all the freshmen everybody on the roster, but most importantly, the freshmen, they never had that full off-season experience with workouts and one-on-one and the individual stuff that they get to do, and that camaraderie building, the chemistry that gets built during those off-season workouts as well. So it'd be paramount to get that in place and really give these guys as much runway as possible as we head into the off season, and all eyes looking at Hoosier hysteria here in 186 days.
Yeah, Tony hit us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline and says it's crazy that on many people's coaching list 10 days ago, you probably had Woodson, Fife, Mata on that list. Rankings vary per person, of course, but all three end up on the staff. Impressive. Yeah, it is, because those are three names that were all mentioned as potential head coaches. Mata, they wanted Mata as head coach. That did not work out physically, of course. Then you started hearing Mike Woodson and Dane Fife and all these other names. But to get all three of those guys on the staff, yeah, that is a great point, and it is pretty impressive.
Well, and it's not just the names that were on the list, that we've checked those boxes off. It's the specific attributes of those individuals. Thad Mata's familiarity with Midwest basketball at the high school, AAU, and college level. Dane Fife's just intimate knowledge of the Big Ten and the recruiting circuits, not just regionally but nationally, absolutely paramount as far as bringing as much depth of experience as you can to that bench. To lend counsel to Mike Woodson, but also to effectuate the development of the players you have on the roster. And that's been one of the most common concerns I've heard voiced over the last several years is player development. It's not just getting the kids, it's getting the most out of the kids while you've got them. And you want to talk about just an all-star cast of guys to help achieve that. I think you'd honestly be hard pressed to find a better roster of coaches or administrators, if you will, to really help further those goals.
Yeah, we got to take a quick break, but when we come back, one thing I'd like to talk about. Yesterday, I had Jake Crane on from the J-Boy Show out of Atlanta. He thinks that Keon Brooks is a potential portal guy, but hadn't seen that yet. But we'll see if that happens. Kentucky does have one guy in the portal today, but we'll talk about all that and more when we're back to the Golf Company Eagle Point Studios right after this. Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking for a new or a used vehicle, Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington's.
Did you see the picture of my duck last night? Next to the car at Lucas Oil Stadium, there was a duck right next to my car, right next to my front wheel.
I didn't see yours. That's been a fascination of Osterman's for a while now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I looked at him and I was kind of trying to scare him off a little bit, and he just hissed at me and he just stayed there. Then I backed up. I was going to run him over, so I had to back up.
Is this in the Lucas Oil Stadium parking lot?
Lucas Stadium parking lot. This is a duck. It's just like a big old duck.
He must live there then if Osterman's been probably feeding him, or maybe.
Well, you've got the canal just north of it. You're right by the white, and for opportunistic waterfowl, there's all sorts of ground scores everywhere. So they certainly staked that territory out. I've actually I've had similar experiences in the area with some of them. But man, those things are fearless. They are the bird equivalent of Bloomington squirrels. They give zero concern.
Or Eagle Point deer.
Yeah, well, it's 812 deer, all of southern Indiana.
You should see the front of my car right now. It is destroyed.
Again?
No, just from the one. I haven't gotten the deer.
Okay.
The deer. I'm waiting on Yorkie to get me hooked up with the guy to fix my deer hood ornament.
I was driving my daughter to school today on Sayre Road, just coming up alongside Hyde Park, and there were literally 14 of them that stopped traffic as they sprinted across the street, only to go stand in the yard and munch on some flowers.
And look back at you like, what you doing, man?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never saw this dude. He was a hood ornament. Boom. Oh, I forgot. I know what I was going to say earlier. Yeah, that middle coaching spot, I have no idea what they're doing there. If I don't think that they're going to go another Indiana guy. I don't think Hunter or not. I don't think that Roberts is going to be kept. I don't see there's any reason to keep him. But I wonder if they don't go out and get an NBA kind of guy.
I'm really curious to see. I guess when they had a team meeting last week, and Woody was basically laying it down for him, and said, I understand that it's a big change, and I need to know who wants to be here. And then he asked the team, he asked the team specifically to raise their hand if they currently wanted to come back. And Roberts put his hand up with the players.
To feel overwhelmed, anxious,
Oh my
or
God,
afraid.
that
There
tells you a
is
lot
hope.
right there. That's
Reach
kind
out
of
to
funny.
someone, connect
Yeah, I
with
got a
your
kick out of
friends, stay in touch with your community, and know that you are not alone. Learn more at wearebroadcasters.com/hope. Furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sillersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry. Welcome back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Tuesday. Chronic Hoosiers with us, Kevin Brockway as well. Keon Brooks came up yesterday. Jake Crane from J-Boy Show out of Atlanta was on and said that he thinks that he may be hitting the portal, but his dad is kind of refuting that. But Kentucky does have a player that entered the portal. I forget who that was. Saw that earlier. Yeah, ask you. So there's one. But wouldn't it be ironic, though, for Keon Brooks Jr. to enter the portal and come to Indiana?
I mean, at this day and age, it's all the people who, the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, the near misses. It seems like everybody's in play right now. So who knows? And that's one thing I forgot to say about Fife earlier too. Dane does wonders in northern Indiana. Areas where Indiana has really, really struggled. Gary, Fort Wayne, all across the toll road corridor up there.
Indiana never does well up there. Yeah,
Indiana has been locked out historically from the northern
Purdue's
part of the
kicking
state.
their ass. Purdue and Notre Dame kills them up there.
Expect to see the Hoosiers get a whole lot more competitive up there, especially when you start looking at some of those Fort Wayne boys. Man, they are tough nuts to crack when you're coming up in candy stripes. So expect that to change, but who knows? I mean, honestly, who knows? My guess is Kenya Hunter probably had a couple of guys in the bag, or that he had some really good inroads with that brought a lot of value to the short-term future of the recruiting scene. That's the other element, though, as he looks to fill that final coaching spot. My guess is it's going to be somebody that is really well-rounded, that probably has some prior experience in the college ranks, but also has some pretty proven developmental experience getting guys ready for the next level. So whether it be a former NBA guy or what have you, it's all signs point to a really dynamic and capable bench. And hopefully that translates into a very dynamic and capable roster. And I think the one thing too that is everybody's kind of losing their mind as all these bombs keep dropping about the program, and the optimism continues to rise. Talking with a good friend of mine who's really close to the program as well, also recognizing, there's certainly some pieces, there's some ingredients left to cook with, but also, the type of culture change that Woodson's going to look to enact is going to take some time. And a big part of that obviously is going to be player development and recruiting. But it takes time to build these things up. So, being realistic at the same time as well. Because if there's one thing Indiana fans are great at, it's that overreaction instantly. And I'm not expecting the Hoosiers to be back in the Final Four next year. Reasonably, let's talk about maybe just making the tournament, maybe just staying competitive against the top class of the league, and growing it organically and naturally. And supporting them every step along the way, but understanding it's going to be a process to get back on top, and also recognizing how far they've fallen at this point, and just what it's going to take to get back up.
I don't, but it doesn't have to be as far as people think. And case in point, look at Mick Cronin and UCLA, what they've done there. And Keith brings up a great point. We're talking about this missing spot for this assistant coach. With the connections to the Knicks and the NBA, he asked, what about the possibility of Del Davis or Carmelo? becoming an assistant coach. I mean, there's a chance of anything. There's a ton of possibilities because of what Mike Woodson brings to this equation and his umpteen years of NBA experience. So yeah, there's a chance of that. There's a chance of a lot of other things as well. But here's something else Stephen brought up. Rob Phinisee. Yeah, we are not talking about Rob Phinisee much at all. Mainly because he hasn't developed, but that some of that's on him, of course, but some of that's on the staff. Do we hope that he develops? I mean, how much can we expect development out of him in a year now to going into this final season? It's almost, I don't know. That's a good question.
I just had this conversation yesterday with a good friend of mine, a former beat writer for the Indiana Daily Student, and he was talking about, is it really a huge loss if those remaining guys that are in the portal don't end up coming back to Indiana? Is the opportunity cost of the next available guy greater? And my whole thing is, right now you're looking at a roster that has limited upperclassmen or limited experience in as far as functional contributions. Rob Phinisee being one of them. Joey Brunk, we still haven't heard whether or not he's going to come back. And while it certainly brings, a lot of leadership, there's also the functional role of, what contributions are you expecting from those scholarships? As upperclassmen, you really expect these guys not just to lead on and off the floor, but you need to get something from those guys on the floor. You got to justify those minutes. I'd probably throw Jerome Hunter in that same boat as well. He had to reclass with the injury, but that's another guy that he's just kind of been. I don't want to say he's been treading water. There's been some growth, or at least in his utilization. But which of those guys are going to make the leap? Similar to what we saw with Armand coming out of his freshman to sophomore year, because quite frankly, you can't have a bunch of guys that are just placeholders on this roster if you expect different results. You're going to have to get more from what you got, or go find somebody else that's going to be able to give you more. And I'm certainly not advocating that he push guys out the door, but that's got to be part of that culture change. Is there's greater expectation the more time you've been here as an upperclassman. You have to contribute in multiple ways on and off the floor. But at the end of the day, it's a results-driven game, man. You've got to find a way to get contributions on the hardwood from.
Well, what if you get the point guard from Pitt, Xavier? Who's in the mix apparently, and he's got a little bit of relationship with Kenya Hunter, and then you have him, you have Christian Lander, and then you have Phinisee. It seems like you've got kind of a logjam in that position, and you could probably play 2 point guards at the same time. Gonzaga did that obviously with Suggs and Nembhard to success, but it does seem like you're kind of logjamming that position a little bit in terms of minutes.
Well, but Christian Lander's got to learn. He's still got to come along too. He's got to progress, so he's not going to be taking as many minutes as the veterans will.
No, and that's ultimately, competition is going to be a great thing for this team at every spot. But, you also have to recognize you've got some pretty significant depth issues in the post. You have a glaring deficit right now, just as far as scorers, especially with Armand not being clear about what his future holds. You've got to find guys that can get the ball in the basket, and Parker Stewart certainly brings some promise to that. But again, that remains an unknown quantity. So really trying to figure out exactly what needs are going to be most pressing and how those get filled with what you currently have and what's possibly available on the market. There's some big decisions to be made here going forward, and I think you have to look at it, as I said earlier, 3-dimensional chess. It's not just getting better now; it's what's going to be the moves that set the foundation for next year's growth and thereafter, and really trying to build something that's durable and built to last.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. And also looking forward to a myriad of spring sports, guys. We have spring football there's like 6 or 7 conferences out west that didn't play football last fall. So we're going to have spring football. You've got Indiana soccer wrapped up another Big Ten title already. 17. I guess the tournament is coming up yet, so we still have that to get through. But they have quietly already wrapped up another Big Ten championship. And it's sad that it has been so quiet, but that's with all that's been going on with basketball and COVID and all that. Baseball, they're playing well. Of course, kind of got wrapped this weekend, but I haven't gotten to get out and see any of that. And it's it's really disappointing.
I think that's partly why you see the kind of the lack of buzz around the soccer program, because nobody can go in. I mean, it's with the Big Ten deciding that they're going to leave it up to the local area authorities as to whether or not they're going to allow fans, but lifting the cap of conference wide, Monroe County has chosen still to prohibit spectators at these outdoor events. So haven't had a chance to see the soccer team, haven't had a chance to see the baseball team. Although nobody's told me, if you go set up some lawn chairs out in the center field lawn on that hill there, whether or not they're going to shoo you off. Same with soccer. If you go park in the back of the church and look over the fence, whether or not that's going to be frowned upon. But it's too bad that fans haven't had a chance to go out there and see them. I know the kids are just happy to go back out and compete again. But as we're seeing nationwide now, as things start to lift a little bit, it's a whole different ball game when you bring the energy of the fans back. So excited to get back to that. Excited to see what the second season holds for some of these teams now that as they're starting to round out the year and get into the postseason play. Soccer they'll be hosting the entire Big Ten tournament. They got Northwestern at home on Saturday at 2, I believe, as they start their tournament season up with one of the 3 trophies in the bag. And we'll see what Mercer can do with the baseball team. They came out like gangbusters, but they've been struggling as of late. So it's kind of gut check time for the baseball team as well right now. But there's still plenty of sports left here in this college season before things wrap up and we fully move on to B-Town summer.
Absolutely. Dr. J here, he commented there. If you're down in southern Indiana in the Sellersburg areas, make sure you go see him. Reynolds Family Dentistry, one of our sponsors from the very beginning. That's going to wrap up the radio side. We'll jump off. Thanks, everybody, for being along with us today. Thanks a lot to Mike DeCourcy, of course, to Chronic Hoosier and Kevin Brockway, and to all of you. Without you guys, there's nothing. So go out and do something nice for somebody. Wear your mask. And until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio. All right, not really. There's not any reason for overtime today. We've got press conferences to actually get to.
I did see a comment about Noah Locke, the kid from Florida, the 3-point shooter. I can tell you this. He's getting calls from all around the country, but would be a really nice addition. 40% 3-point shooter and a volume 3-point shooter. He's the kind of guy that can rattle off like 3 or 4 or 5 in a game, which is what Indiana, would
what
be
about
nice
Parker Stewart?
We don't know yet about Parker Stewart. There's a lot we don't know.
According to Chase Jackson,
Parker Stewart's a 36% career 3-point shooter. Noah Locke is 42.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's pretty damn good.
Yeah,
that is really good.
Noah's above 40%. I mean, he's really, really good. I mean, he's a dead-eye guy. But he's had some injury issues at Florida, and he's kind of one-dimensional. I mean, he's a catch-and-shoot guy. Apparently, I heard some rumblings that he kind of wanted to do more down there at Florida, and the coaching staff didn't think so. Like, he wanted to be more of a combo guard. But as a shooter, he's pretty good.
Yes, that's Chris. That's a definitive. Archie did 0 with development. He did 0 with everything. I mean, that's clear. But that's just going to wrap it up. We got to get out of here to get to these press conferences, unfortunately, today. But we'll be back tomorrow. Kyle Neddenriep, Bob Kravitz. See if I can get Jordan on tomorrow. I haven't had him on since the coach.
I'll be off next week. I'll be in sunny Florida, so taking a little break. Much deserved.
Well, what are you doing Thursday?
Why? What do you need Thursday?
Well, Dustin's not with us on Thursday. He's off. If you can sit in Thursday instead of next week, that would be great. All right, cool. Works perfectly. Well, thanks to everybody. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you follow Kevin Brockway on Twitter and every place else, and me as well. If you don't, make sure you follow me on Twitter and are signed up for YouTube because we're going to start giving these visors and hats away. But thanks to everybody. Appreciate you guys. Thanks to Kevin. Thanks to Chronic. Thanks to Mike. But thanks to you guys most of all. We appreciate you. And thanks to Will for filling in today. I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.